Hi, my name is Lara. Welcome to my channel, Inner Goddess Guidance. I'd like to thank all of my new subscribers and thank Angela from Mystic Moon for doing a fabulous collaboration with me yesterday. And that was a wonderful experiment. And I want to start by making a huge apology. And the apology is that for whatever reason, and I think it's spirit-based, when Angela sent me the link for her video, I saw that her length was 17 minutes, 17 seconds. And I looked twice and verified it. And I thought, that's so cool that it was 17 minutes, 17 seconds, which is what prompted me to look up that information and begin the video with that. It wasn't until we actually published the videos and made them live, so it had already gone up and I'd already finished my video, that I saw that her video was actually 29 minutes long. And you know what? It was too late. I just had to live with that mistake and believe, and still do, that there was a special message there. My spirit guides like to trick me sometimes. And so I want to give a little background for those of you who are new. By the way, Angela and I spoke this morning and we plan on doing more collaborations. We might make some little tweaks, and I definitely see some things that I can do better to make the message clearer. But hopefully for those of you who began yesterday and started with me, you found some things useful there. So a little bit of background about me and the channel and how I came up with it. I will not talk too long, but if I do, I'll make sure that there is a timestamp for those of you who choose to skip the introduction. I totally understand. So a bit about my background. I was a teacher for 26 years. I became a personal coach. I awakened to my path as a divine feminine this last October. And when that happened, it dramatically changed my life. Those of you who are twin flames and have been through that awakening understand. So I am a scholar and I love learning. And one of the things that I wanted to do desperately was to make sense of the journey. Of course, I started to watch tarot readers like Angela and others. And I would get all this information from the tarot readings, but I didn't really know what to do with it. I mean, if my job was to heal myself, it really needed some tangible tools. Now, fortunately, in addition to being a teacher and therefore loving to do research and stuff, I also am trained as a personal coach, and the personal coaching that I do is called Neuro Coaching. It's pioneered by a man named Mark Robert Waldman. It is a mindfulness-based coaching strategy, and it's wonderfully effective and all based in scientific research. And he has written and spoken prolifically on the brain and how it works and how we can sort of maximize its potential and reduce those things that we do that impede our ability to be successful in life. So when about May, June, I had a visit. Archangel Gabriel came to me and gave me a mission, and it was to do this channel. And I was shocked. I didn't want to do it. My reaction to doing this, I've never wanted to put myself out there. It felt very vulnerable to me, which is actually the topic of today. And I actually cried. I didn't want to do it. I said, please let me be a tarot reader. Can't you just, give me that skill instead? They don't have to show their faces. I felt like that would be a little bit more of a protection. But I was told by my spirit guides and by Archangel Gabriel that my job was to show up and be as authentic as I could be. That my job was not to tell people what to do, what to think, and what to believe. But my job was to tell them that they can do it themselves, and to give tips and tools and strategies to assist them, to give ideas to be a place where they could go when they were searching for some extra support, to tell people that their guidance system is within them. And so that is my purpose with this channel. Yeah, that's what I do all the time, is just show up, be as authentic as I can, and share the tips, tools, strategies that have been effective for me and effective for other people. I try them all, I use them all. And in addition to that, I was also given a special project, and that special project is a healing strategy, and that project is to create a divine feminine healing oracle, and it's with divine feminines on the twin flame path. And so to do that, I started a Facebook group. If you are interested in creating your own oracle card deck, and that entails twice a week a different subject, so 2 different times I put out 2 different videos, Fridays and Mondays. And then you think deeply. I usually do a dedicated video, and after you think about that for yourself and what it means for yourself, and do some art, and that can be digital, it could be by hand, there's all different modalities you could use, then you create your cards. When we're finished, women from all over the world who are in the group, and those even who are not, who want to submit a card for consideration for a published Divine Feminine Healing Card deck, will submit their card, and that deck will be created. I'm currently speaking to publishers about that. So if you're interested in that project, please refer to the Oracle deck creation video. There's also a video at the very beginning of all of this that says beginnings, my very first video, that will tell you a little bit more about the strategy of how I set up this channel and why I'm doing it the way that I am. So the channel relies on some consistent things. If you want to just refer back to the times when I'm doing collaborations with Angela, that's fabulous. If you want to look back in the videos and you find one that speaks to you, you want to watch that, then watch that as needed. You might find them helpful. So the strategy is really something that can adapt to you, because like I said, my mission was given to me that I was to set it up very much the same way I would set up my classes, and that it had to be able to be adaptable for each person where they're at in the journey and what that person needs to work on. And so what I did was I found a structure that had worked for me, and I sort of formalized it. I'm also working on publishing journals with this structure now. But the structure is really very simple. You take a journal, can just be a spiral notebook or anything that you want to dedicate to that. And the journal is has affirmation, a focus of the day, a reflection of the day, and a gratitude for the day. And so this is mine for today. My vulnerability is my focus. Here's my notes that I took as I was watching some videos today and doing research today. I made an affirmation for myself. And at the end of the day, the last 10 minutes, I'll come back and I'll reflect, and I'll write in here. And then I'll do my gratitudes down here. I suggest at least one, and 5 is a sort of a magic number for that. So I think I've told you all that you need to know, and I will timestamp from here for those of you who already knew all of that. And again, I do apologize for the whole 1717 mess up. I figure after some reflection and speaking to somebody in the comments, that it was really a test for me about going ahead and being vulnerable and making a mistake, and just being okay with it, because that's who we are. We're human and we make mistakes. So kind of embarrassing, but you know what? It happened. There's got to be a reason. So today the topic is vulnerability, and this is a dedicated video for the Oracle Project. That doesn't mean that it's not valuable to listen to. So if you'd like to delve deeply into vulnerability, I have some resources for you and some ideas. And so the first thing I want to say is that probably the most prolific researcher on vulnerability is named Brene Brown. And Brene Brown has a couple of TED Talks, a RSA talk. She's all over. If you look her up, Brene Brown on YouTube, you're going to find plenty of videos. And she's written several books. This one is called Daring Greatly. And it says how the courage to be vulnerable transforms the way we live, love, parent, and lead. It is a bestseller, highly recommended. My son bought it for me for Christmas. She also wrote a book that I really enjoyed called, what was it called? The Power of Perfection, the Gifts of Imperfection, which I read years ago. So I will be linking several of her talks on YouTube in the description box for you. And I suggest that you go and listen to one or several. One of them is called The Power of Vulnerability. That is her TED Talk. It's only 20 minutes long. There's The Price of Invulnerability. That is a TEDx Kansas City talk. It's 16 minutes. Embracing Vulnerability, which is just a 5-minute clip, and then the RSA replay, which is longer at an hour. So I will link those for you. They are where I started today to consider and work through and then figure out strategies for working with vulnerability. So her TED Talk, she kind of walks through how she got to the study of vulnerability. It's very funny talk and really entertaining to listen to. And I always like to listen to things while I'm doing other stuff, unless I'm taking notes, which I was doing today. And then all my attention is there, and I'm pausing and starting again. One of the things she did was she was studying how people are wholehearted, the people who she considered living a wholehearted life. She is a sociology major. She has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and a PhD, all in sociology. And she noticed some things about people who lived what she called a wholehearted life. She noticed one thing that they did was they fully embraced vulnerability. She said that we often think that vulnerability means weakness, or that the opposite of vulnerability is strength. But those things are not true. She said that that what it is, though, is somebody who's vulnerable has a sense of courage. And she defined that as she went back to the Latin and said it means to tell the story of who you are from your heart, with your whole heart. It's like showing up in a very authentic way. She said that these people had the courage to be authentic, that they understood that compassion was to first be kind to themselves, because before they could be compassionate to themselves, they couldn't be compassionate to other people. And that they understood that connection is a result of authenticity, that the degree to which we can connect with another person is related to the amount that we can be authentic with them. She said that they believed that vulnerability, what made them vulnerable, made them beautiful. What made them vulnerable made them beautiful. She said that they saw vulnerability as necessary. And I think that, a lot of times, at least and I think a lot of us struggle with vulnerability because we don't want to make ourselves open to the possibility of being hurt. And so maybe we don't think it's necessary, but that these people who are wholehearted believe that it is. And that they understand that to be vulnerable is to do things without any guarantee. They are willing to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. She said, and this to me was key, vulnerability is the core of some really undesirable emotions and feelings. It's the core of shame, fear, and unworthiness. But it is also the birthplace of joy, creativity, belonging, and love. And she went into a lot of details about what ways that we avoid being vulnerable, because we think that we're avoiding those negative things. But I loved a really important quote that she had, was that when we avoid vulnerability and we avoid the negative emotions, when we like numb to them, and we numb in a lot of ways, we put on armor to avoid them, we also are avoiding the other end of the spectrum. So you can only experience one to the same degree that you can experience or open yourself up to the other. So if you shut down your capacity to be vulnerable and to feel those quote unquote negative or darker emotions, you also shut off your capacity to feel the positive ones, including joy and love. I thought that was fascinating and beautiful quote, and I really did some deep thinking about that, because I know that that's true in my life for sure. She says, our capacity for wholeheartedness can never be greater than our willingness to be broken-hearted. Our capacity for wholeheartedness can never be greater than our willingness to be brokenhearted. We can only love and be loved as much as we are willing to be heartbroken. I know we all want to avoid that heartbreak, and if you're watching this, I imagine that you have felt that deeply, because you are probably in separation with somebody who is a soulmate or even a twin flame, or whatever definition you want to put on it. You love that person greatly. And you have also experienced the heartbreak. I think, it's important for us to understand that even if it seems like that's a weakness, it's really not. It's a strength. It feels yucky, but the only reason we're heartbroken is because we loved so much. There's the other side, right? Like, you don't miss something, you're not hurt when somebody you don't care about, when you haven't opened yourself up, when you haven't engaged, when you haven't connected deeply with somebody, you don't miss them. You don't, long for them. You don't care when people you don't care about walk away. So I thought it was really important for me to remember, even when I'm in those darker moments, that it is because I am a wholehearted person that I have been able to engage that deeply. and that I was able in that relationship to feel great joy. Yeah. She says that we should embrace our vulnerability. She says vulnerability is not a weakness. So when you're feeling vulnerable and you're feeling those dark emotions, instead of thinking in your head the thought, I'm weak, I'm pathetic, and doing all of those sort of negative thoughts, one thing to do is to turn that around and give yourself an affirmation. So the affirmations I wrote today: I allow myself to be seen. I am enough. I am worthy of great, loving connections. And of course, I'm worthy of great, loving connections means I'm going to be vulnerable. Because if that's true, that I can only love and be loved as much as I'm willing to be heartbroken, then I'm going to, right, take the risk again. If we armor up, she calls it armoring up. If we armor up, then we're actually, she says, we armor up because we don't think we're good enough. We have a culture of scarcity. We have a belief, a fundamental belief that we are not, and she has a list of them. We're not good enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not, she says the most dangerous one is believing we're not exceptional enough. You know, that somehow our life has to be huge to be successful, and that we've forgotten that the ordinary is extraordinary. The ordinary is where the joy is where the beauty is, in those moments. And when I thought about that, I realized that was completely true. But she says, every day we sort of armor up. We start pretending or putting on masks. We cover ourselves up in an effort not to be vulnerable. We pursue perfection, right? I'm not perfect enough. So we pretend to be somebody that we're not. Or we aspire to not show any vulnerability. But it's the points of our vulnerability that enable another person to connect with us, not our strengths. So she had gone through 13,000 pieces of data and she collected over 12 years of study. And she said that all stories of courage, every single story of those 13,000 pieces, every single one was underpinned by vulnerability. That it was the capacity to be vulnerable and take that leap of faith anyway, right? That is the courageous action. That's what courage is. It's not safety. It's not behind armor. It's exposure. She says that her definition of vulnerability is this: uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. A willingness to show up and to be seen, even when there are no guarantees. And there really aren't. We'd like to think there are guarantees. There aren't. There's no guarantee. There is no guarantee that tomorrow's going to come. Now we can live in fear of that, and we can protect ourselves from that. We could do everything we can to try to pin somebody to us and demand that they be committed, right? But there is no guarantee. That's why it's risky to love. You might be hurt. But what the people who live wholeheartedly know, of course, is that that's where joy is. If you shut yourself off, if you don't connect, there are lots of people in relationships that might be satisfying. They might meet their needs sexually. They might meet their needs in all kinds of socially, familially, in a status way. But if they aren't able to be vulnerable with that other person, to show up and be seen, and to expose their heart and take that risk, those are the relationships that when they crumble, we don't miss them. And yet, when you show up and you're seen and you feel something deeply for another person, even if that is only a weekend's time or a very short period of time, if you had that kind of connection, then yes, it hurts when that is not reciprocated, or when it doesn't last, or when it's gone. So anyway, I thought that was, it just made me think. That's all. And it really resonated for me on this journey. Um, she says that we are losing our capacity or our tolerance for vulnerability in today's world. We're losing our tolerance for vulnerability because vulnerability is perceived as weakness. So we're all trying to be as perfect as we can and not show that we're weak. She says that when that happens, joy becomes foreboding. Disappointment is a lifestyle. There is a low-grade disconnection with everyone. That we are caught in a cycle of seeking perfection, which is different than healthy striving. So she said, we should all be striving to be better. That's what we're doing. That's why I'm doing the channel. That's what I do every day. I'm striving to be better, to heal, to be more, to get in touch with my highest self, and then bring that forward into my daily life now. And that is healthy striving. Perfection is different. Perfection is what I felt when I used to spend all of my time keeping an immaculate house and thinking it had to be perfect, and feeling like I was a constant failure because I knew that when I was married, what my husband expected a wife to be I was never going to be able to be that. And so even though I was all the time trying to be perfect, there was this constant voice inside of me that said, this is a lie. This isn't you. It's not authentic to you. And it felt so dissatisfying. She says that we also, this desire to push away vulnerability is also led to a culture of extremism. And that she gave the example of faith or politics. I'm right, you're wrong. It's black and white. There's good and bad. There's no gray areas anymore. And she said it's because we want to be right. We want to be perfect. We don't want to understand that we're human, that we're changing. And I think about that, now, like how very few people just are willing to say, you know what, I made a mistake. She said companies, for example, will do all of this, work to try to control a message to make them seem perfect, instead of just saying, we screwed up, and trying to fix the problem, fix the issue. And then she says, we're all living somewhat numb, that we have all different ways we numb. And she talks about how we this adult cohort today is the most, addicted, overweight. I can't remember all the things she listed. There were like 5. And so it's really worth going back and watching, because obviously I can't in a few minutes sort of sum up all that she said. She did say that what is driving the intolerance for vulnerability is that scarcity sense of not whatever enough. She said, fill in the blank, not beautiful enough, not this enough, not that enough. So I've got to fix it, fix it, fix it. She gave the example of people taking fat out of their butts to put it in their cheeks, you know. Everyone laughed at that. So that we are getting messages in our culture all the time of scarcity, and we're feeding them to ourselves every single day. So she said that one of the keys is just to become really grateful and practice gratitude, which of course is one of the components of the journal. So my suggestions today is to really tune into when you start to feel vulnerable. She talks about becoming aware of your emotions and curious about your emotions, and gives some wonderful examples and stories from her own life. And to know that we're not going to be perfect, because I know this. When I started this journey, and I heard the whole twin flame label, and then I understood that's what I was going through. And then being involved in the quote unquote light worker community, I felt immense pressure by that. Oh my gosh, I don't understand this like this person does. I'm still struggling. I'm still dealing with my fluctuating energy. How do I simultaneously learn how to balance my energy and do full moon rituals and understand using crystals and doing meditation? And there seemed to be so much stuff going on that I was trying to say, oh my gosh, like, how come I can't just be that right now? How come I can't be perfect? Well, none of us are. None of us are. And if we understand that we don't have to pursue that perfection, we just pursue being a little better, and then being really, I think, honest about where we're at. Some of my best conversations are not talking with other divine feminines about how fabulous we are and how we have it all figured out. In fact, there were times that I remember listening to channels, and there was like part of me that almost reacted when somebody acted like they knew everything. It was like, well, how do you know? Like, who gave you the rule book? What makes you an expert? And I know that Angela mentioned that on her channel the other day, and I was like, good for you, Angela, as I agree with that. But when I'm really connecting, my connection to anybody on this journey is not through the fabulous things we've done. It's through our moments of vulnerability. That's when I have the capacity to connect with another person on from a place of true compassion. Yeah. So anyway, I suggest that you write some affirmations when it comes to vulnerability. I think this is one of the huge topics that I'm going to be working with, not just today. It's not just a hit it one time and then it's done. um, you know, it's a theme. It comes back. And I'm constantly learning more. And I'm not going to show up and be vulnerable to everybody in the world. They do not all need to know me in that kind of way. But what I'm doing here with you is vulnerable. This is freaking vulnerable. I did not want this mission because I was afraid of doing exactly what I was asked to do, which was show up, be real, talk about the struggles, give some tools. So when it comes to the tools today, My suggestion is listen to those videos. However long you have, just pick some and listen to them. Maybe you buy her books, read them slowly. You don't have to tackle the whole thing at once. Take some notes and make your own connections. What resonates with you? And then write yourself some affirmations. And these might be affirmations that come from things she said. For example, when she talked about not being worthy, like I'm not blank enough, right? So I turned that into an affirmation by saying, I am enough. I'm enough. I am enough. So maybe I catch myself when I'm trying to be put on a false mask, or I'm putting on armor. Maybe I just say I'm enough. I allow myself to be seen with friends, with family. The more I can learn to be authentic with all the people I love, the more I will end up being able to experience all the whole realm of emotion, right? And then I said, I am worthy of great, loving connections. And there's other things from the, I highlighted this, to feel this vulnerable means I'm alive. So when you're feeling vulnerable and you're in a moment of feeling vulnerable, if you can bring your mind back to, instead of this is bad, you just become curious, like she said, really curious about your emotions, but also to give yourself the message, to feel this vulnerable means I'm alive. You're not numb to life. In other words, you're feeling it. I allow myself to be deeply seen. I love with my whole heart, even though there's no guarantee. I practice gratitude and joy. I believe that I am enough. So that's just taking from things that she had said that I had written down. I can only love and be loved as much as I am willing to be heartbroken. Vulnerability is necessary. Those are the messages you want to remind yourself and repeat them often, like an affirmation. And then, of course, really putting into practice at the end of every day the gratitude, not gratitudes for the big things, gratitudes for the everyday things in your life, the small ones. And you know what? Even the gratitude. I have gratitude that I have felt deeply for another human being. I have gratitude that I have memories of such joy. I have gratitude for what is in my life instead of what is lacking. So all of those things will help sort of enable you to feel more courageous and therefore be able to show up in a more authentic and vulnerable way. And remember that it is the being able to do that that makes the difference between somebody who lives a wholehearted life. And that's what I want, and I think that's what you want too. And yeah, so when I feel the desire to numb because I'm vulnerable, I'm just going to tell myself the next time, I feel grateful that I am living a wholehearted life. I will feel my pain. I will feel my vulnerability. I will feel my fear. Because I know that in feeling it, I will also feel the opposite. So I think that's what I wanted to say today. I think that I pulled out a few of these tarot cards because I thought they spoke of the same kind of vulnerability. This is, of course, the Two of Swords. She's not vulnerable. She's shut herself off. She's closed. The opposite of that would be like the Page of Cups, very open, offering his heart, his cup, right? Was sort of that free, childlike, here, I'm going to trust you. Another one, of course, that we're all familiar with is this one, the Three of Swords. And that's horrible. It's horrible to feel that pain. But the only reason you feel that pain is because you were vulnerable. And that doesn't mean that the answer to that is to get like this, right? The answer isn't to armor up. Because if what we want is this, right, then we have to be open. Notice how they're open, facing each other and offering their cups to each other. And then I was thinking that the Fool is the living the wholehearted life, taking those risks to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be seen. And I was really struck when I looked at the Lovers card, because when I was thinking of vulnerable, there was part of me that was thinking about how vulnerable it is to get naked with somebody. That's pretty vulnerable for me. And on the card, we've got the man and the woman naked. And it's just sort of a kind of exposure, a vulnerable exposure. So I pulled those out thinking that that would kind of be interesting, that those were the themes of vulnerability in the tarot deck. That's all. Gonna say goodbye now, and do check out the other videos if you'd like. Don't forget about the oracle cards and the journaling, and that we will, Angela and I will be doing more videos. And don't be afraid of mistakes. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to be you, because that is exactly where your power lies. Okay? Thank you. Talk to you later. Thanks for showing up. Bye.